Hi there, and this is part 2 of the integration of PBIS and time in for schools and how it can change the culture of your school. Part of a 3-day in-service with Dr. Kiti Randall. Today we're going to be talking about the deep need for connectiveness that's essential for child's health and development. Then we'll move into what I think is spectacular is neuronal regeneration is possible. Wow, it's great to know that as an educator. And then, of course, any improved social environment can take a vulnerability and make it an asset. And then finally, interventions will work if there's a positive social environment. So enjoy, and as always, there's only 2 slides in this presentation, but they'll be at the end so you can see them, because in the video it's not so great.
So the thing that we need to understand from this is that procedural memories will impact the classroom, and we can go to the next slide, but that there are things that we can do about it. So those are the risk factors. That's the backdrop to what's happening often with misbehavior in the classroom. But what is it we can do about it? And so this is where more of the concept of the relational time in. I need time in connection with you, okay? In a world where everything's about distancing. And right now I'm working on a talk that I have to do at a conference in Geneva with the World Health Organization on techno-isolationism, okay? That's what I call it. And I actually heard that in a sermon from a pastor, and I'm like, I'm taking that, and he said, okay. But that is like the antithesis, right, of time in, is that isolation. And everybody thinks, oh, you know, like even my colleagues, you know, it used to be about, oh, you know, what are you doing in your work? And now colleagues will say, how many Google pages do you have? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? That's gross. And then, or else they'll say, you know, like I'll look at my my friends, and they'll, you know, they're not in my world, they're in other worlds, but they're all like, I have 20 followers on Pinterest, or that's not even really good, I guess. You have to have 100 to be good, you know? But there's all of these things, so I divert a little, but it's okay, because I feel like sometimes when I'm inspired by you, I have to tell you things. So I have to tell you this story, because it relates to my whole construct of time in, and the battle that I think, because we are in a tsunami of timeout. Okay? No, I don't mean the, you know, misbehavior timeout. I mean just the world being in timeout. We are in, with that whole industry and other things, and for many different reasons, broken relationships. It's easier for me to be connected with you in a parallel life than an intimate life, for many reasons. And we use substances, all kinds of things happening. But my brother-in-law is a fiber optics creator and developer. I don't really understand what he does. Okay, so he tries to explain me, and he dumbs it down to me to talk about submarines and how they talk, right? Which he says really isn't it, but that's as close as I was getting. So he's like me. He's bi-coastal. My sister, I'm from Canada, so we live on the East Coast, but his work is here in Northern California. So he's traveling a lot, and I'm traveling a lot. And I was talking to my sister, and she goes, Ross is in the Denver airport too, and you both have a long layover. Call him and have lunch or dinner, whatever it was. I think it was dinner time. And I said, oh yeah. And she goes, oh, and his boss is with him. And I thought, oh, I love Ross, but I don't even know what do you say to his boss? Like, you know, I can't ask them anything about their business. And even though I have a passion for what I do, I'm internally a shy person, and people don't always understand that. They think because you can present, you know, I'm more shy, especially when it's more like I don't know you and we gotta connect. So I thought, what am I going to say? So I've learned a few things. So I know what's safe. What's the mission of your company, right? Okay, because that has to be in my language, right? The mission of your company is psychological, right? I don't have to go to this. So I meet them, hello, hi, whatever, really nice. So I said, what's the mission? Now, remember, I'm going on my way to do a talk that's related to people needing to spend time with their kids for prevention, right? That's where I'm going overseas to do this. And so he said, and I didn't know what to do, because there he came out with, well, We want to be the first, not the only. We want to be the first company that develops all the technology so that you never ever have to leave your house or interact with another person to have your internet. It was like that Antichrist thing, you know? I was like, ah! And I was like, oh no, what do I do? Oh, you're taping this too. Let my sister say this.
It's our intellectual property.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh no, what do I do? Like, they're really going to go do the opposite of what the world needs, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, so now I should have gone. I was stupid. I should have gone, but you know, you're taken off guard, and I don't always think that quickly on my feet. And so I should have gone to children. I should have said, oh, but what about your kids? Do you not want their interaction? And I said, you know, what about your wives? I mean, really? And they just looked at me like, you don't think we can't get more from our technology than our wives? And I was like, okay, all right. Anywhere to go, right? But that is the battle, right? That's the battle, is that we're going more and more into a world of not having time together. And there is something, I'll tell you, it's great that we have webinars and we can learn skill sets. It's great that we have as much good as an entity or something can do, it has that power to do the opposite. Okay? So I always say, if you want to learn this skill, right, it gives you power. If you want to be a teacher, it gives you power. As much power as you have to do good, that's the valence of the power you have to do bad or negative, right? And so with anything you learn, that's why some people emotionally too, as much as you can experience joy, that's as much as you can experience sadness. So some people restrict their range of happiness because they don't want to ever get that sad, right? But that's how life is. And so I don't want to get intimately involved with you and to really spend time in with you, because the opposite of that could be the absence of you, okay? And so, so there was this report called Hardwired to Connect that came out, I think, in about 2003. And all of a sudden, I saw this explosion in the psychology, the mental health literature, talking about the importance of relationship. The sad part is we're not as good at doing relationship checkoff lists, like in behavioral strategies, you can check off it happens so many times. We're not as good as evaluating this, so it's still not getting called as evidence-based. But if you look at from a neurobehavioral, a neurorelationship perspective, and you study infancy up, what we're seeing is more and more. And so this report kind of struck me because I was trained in being hardwired, but this was called Hardwired to Connect. So obviously, to me, that's like time in, right? Hardwired to connect. I am. And so what the report is about was that they were worried that there were so many children on mental health waiting lists in this country. And what can we do about it? So they got together about 33 of some of the top child mental health professionals in the country to study what should, give a report, what should our country do about all these children? And often they'll come up with a program or a technique or a medication or whatever, and so I don't always pay attention to these reports. But this one caught me because it was showing all the literature, the thousands of articles now that show that what we need for mental health and well-being and what our children need from us is relationship, connectedness. So what it says in here is the child's deep need for connectedness, other people, and meaning or spirituality is essential to a child's health and well-development. And what we know now about the brain development is that every single part of your neuropsychology, everything behavioral or emotional that you learn and do, is done in the context of relationship. It's learned in the context of relationship. We are primed in our brain to learn through relationship. So let me give you one example, is vision. Okay? The sense that's probably the least developed when you're born is vision, seeing, right? And so, do you know where clear vision occurs in an infant? Right here. Yes, right here. Farther, blurry. Closer, blurry. All learning takes place here. Wouldn't you love it if all the kids' vision was just right there? That's all they could see, right? But they're supposed to have learned to do that, to be connected to you, to know that you're there through this as an infant, right? That they had face-to-face, and that the mother's biorhythm of working and feeding, or the father, of that baby happened in the context of that relationship. Okay? When is an infant even alert? When they're first very, very young, during feeds. Right? That's their most alert time. The rest of the time, all learning takes place here. That ability to regulate their state, to be able to handle the interactions in life, are formed in the first 4 months of life. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have ways to deal with it later, but that habitual response when you're stressed about how do I deal happens in that first 4 months of life. In this interaction, in this synchronicity, to look back, that's okay. So, which is why, right, breastfeeding is one of the things that people promote it for other reasons, and I like to promote it because even if the caregiver's not that great at it, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Bottle propping is like the worst thing for kids to have state regulation in your classroom. Because they never had this. They don't know how to do that, right? They never had that. Their body doesn't know it. So not only are you having to correct a template by your repetition of pattern, you're having to create a whole new one their brains never had, and it's harder to do the whole older you get. It's never too early, never too late, but it takes longer, right? And that whole patterning, it's very hard to do. So, but okay, that's from a psychological perspective, but relationship also develops the eyes for vision. And you know the number one thing that developmental ophthalmologists are saying right now that is destroying or making children have vision issues today is texting. You know why? Where's the caregiver? For one, they text better with only one hand, with the one hand. So they never switch sides, so they'll have lopsided development on the eye muscles because they're not ever switching the side of the baby, right? Because they're always, and the other thing is, they're not getting the interaction because they're over here. So do you see how early on some of the issues, so, and I say that one so you understand a little bit where the kids are coming from, but the underlying message I'm saying with that is a lot of what you're dealing in the classroom isn't about you. Right? So be careful not to make it a battle between you and them, right? They're dealing with not having had the synchronicity as an infant. They're dealing with potential chaos in the home. They're dealing with, I don't know what their history, but I'll tell you, there are little children that I work with that by the age of 3 have had more history than anyone should have ever had in their life in terms of what they know in trauma, etc., and grief, and loss, and hurt, and pain, and chaos. And you here are in a region, you are teaching the highest risk of the highest risk. Okay? Many of them are right here. You know that San Bernardino County produces 20 to 30% of our nation's methamphetamine. Okay? We're the producers. That means somebody's using it here too. We don't just produce and give it away. Okay. And in San Bernardino County, what's the area that provides the highest production? Like here. Here, right? So the thing is, when I go around the world, you know why people listen to me? Because I have experience working here. Because that's what gives me a vita. I work there. I work with those people and those kids, right? And so I want you to know that because I don't want to, because I want to share some constructs, but before I do, and do I have a little more time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You actually have till like 8:45, and if you want to take a break, you can. 3:40.
You guys okay if we keep going? We're okay. Keep going. Okay. All right. So I want to share some constructs with you because I think the best things in life are simple, you know, Time in's not a difficult, I mean, how's she gonna talk about it, time in for an hour? She said it in the first slide, right? It's simple, but it's really sometimes hard to do. And part of that, so I want to give some strategies, but not undermine or underestimate. Here's my ESL issues here coming in. So, but I don't want to diminish the difficulty of teaching in the classroom with some high-risk kids. I don't want to do that. And not every strategy works. Okay? And not every strategy works for every kid. And there's going to be some that float to the top that sadly, you'll all work with them. We'll work with them at Desert Mountain Children's Center. I'll work with them. They may go to resident. And sadly, sometimes our efforts don't work. But it isn't because we didn't try. And that's the important part. And the other thing is, not only did we not try, we kept our own procedural memories out of it and our own egos out of it to say what's best for this kid. So I have to do that a lot because I'm called in as a professional, and I'm called in. I used to be, now I still work with Loma Linda, but I used to spend most of my time there and direct some of the clinics there. And so a wide range, like some parents came in just to see it. My kid's brilliant, right? And you're like, your kid's good. Okay. And then you had the really high risk. But I had a range. So I was fed by some really good experiences in that. As a consultant now, for the last 6 years, I'm only supposed to get the hard cases. You're not paying somebody to come in to see the cases that are doing well. And so every day I see the next worst horrible case in this county. And so it makes it really tough sometimes to really see. So, but what I have to say is even though I'm the consultant, there are times where I'm like, where do we go with this? And I need the teacher. We have to work together. So by that what I'm saying is, I don't have all the answers. I have an experience and a journey that might help. You have an experience and a journey that might help. And the same with your colleague. If I'm really great at teaching a particular course, it doesn't mean I'm great at handling a particular student. So let's work together and realize this isn't about us. Okay, we can have our teacher time and say it's about us and say, I don't like you for this, or I have this with you, but let's connect. But when we're working with the students, it's really not about us. So be careful, because remember that gift you give of yourself? When you feel it's hurt all the time and you can't protect it and you don't have ways to support that, you get bitter, angry, and then it does become a personal issue between you and the students. So we have to be, and you know it's natural for us to do it, you know, boy, the relationship of marriage, that's one, or significant others, that's one that really can teach you that thing about that, you know, and so, you know, sometimes my husband will say something that's very personal. He goes, well, don't take it personally. Hello! That's like, how much more personal can you get without it not taking it personally? But it's important in our work, when we're working with the kids, that we become about them and that we find ways to nurture ourselves to make sure we're healthy. One of the best things I learned in a Gestalt, they do these experiential things in Gestalt. I'm not as great in experiential, but this one was really quite interesting. So they had, so you're observing, and there's a master Gestalt therapist who works with one of you. And this particular woman was from Lithuania. And she was talking, and whenever you go up there, you're going to try to pretend the issue is work or something, because you don't want to share your whole stuff. But it always comes down to your stuff. I mean, we always come back to our stuff. So what she realized, or what came out, was that the reason she was having trouble being there for others is because she was always there for others and was never filled herself. And she had to go around the room and tell each of us that she, at that moment, was more important than us. And it killed her to do that. It just was so hard. But I share that because, you know, I believe in the love thy neighbor as thyself. That thyself isn't hanging on the end as nothing. Thyself means you've taken care of that, and so now you can love your neighbor. And the same way I think in teaching, I find ways to feed myself so the kids don't have to feed me, or that it doesn't become personal with them. And I try really hard to do that. It's very hard sometimes, because they know kids learn how, like this, how to push buttons, and they do make it personal, but those are kinds of things that we need to do. So the good news is that the scientific evidence that you see in the report and otherwhere, there's a whole book, Neurons to Neighborhoods, all kinds of literature coming out now that says that scientific evidence that even neuronal regeneration is possible given the right environment. So we can rewire the brain as long as what? It has to be an improved social environment. Even if it's a heritable vulnerability, you can make it a positive behavioral aspect. But this takes what?
Consistency.
Repetition and consistency, because you're creating a new template. So let's say in classroom A, they get this repetition, but in classroom B, now I'm talking about overall school structure, okay? I'm not talking about in your classroom, there's certain ways you handle it. But if the overall school structure requires certain rules or certain ways of, and in classroom A it's enforced and in classroom B it's not, what happens to that template? It's not laid down. Right? It's just not going to be laid down. Where do I go every time I'm stressed? Back to my procedural memory, whatever that is. Okay, for some kids it's withdrawn, for some kids it's acting out, for some, whatever it is. And the stressor might not even be that somebody is provoking them in the classroom. The stressor might be they don't understand the assignment. And if that's the stressor, guess what happens? They still go to that same procedural memory of what do I do when I'm stressed? Okay, so but our interventions or embracing doing something, as long as we're improving our social environment, can make a change. Remember, if the pattern's laid down in the first 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're getting them, how old are they when they come to you? Okay, let's say they haven't had other experiences that are healthy, and they're getting to you at that age. It's going to take a dang lot of consistency to create, to one, change an old template, and two, to have a new one. But even if, okay, so this doesn't give us an excuse not to try our best, but even if it doesn't change here, their body has learned what it feels like. So later when they search it out, if they have that opportunity to search it out, their body at least can recognize it. To know, think about that. Are there's like places or moments that you've had in life where you just sit in peace? You hopefully all have had that, right? Where you don't have to be in an inebriated state, right? You can just be conscious, you can be aware, you can be with yourself, and you can be at peace. We don't have those very often, but at least I don't. Not because I wouldn't want them, it's just how I keep my life busy. But just think that you have kids who have never, ever known that. Never, ever has their brain known peace. Ever. I've had kids at 17 when I just sat with them and said, hey, it was really great to have met you today, and I enjoyed just getting to learn you. And they start crying because no one has ever said that to them. That anybody enjoys being with them for a moment because they're a pain in them.
Yeah.
But they don't even know what that feels like. Now, I didn't say to this kid, this 17-year-old in his leathers, and he was getting kicked out of whatever, and they were going to whatever. I didn't say, I love you, I'm taking you home. I just said, I was glad to meet you. And then all of a sudden, that whole exterior changed, and the tears came, and nobody ever had said that to this kid in his whole 17 years of Catholic life. And it's just amazing, but we can find ways to do that. So, okay. So.
Okay, this concludes part 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Moving on to part 3. It's going to be very cool. We're going to talk about how all human development proceeds with a relational context, which is super important, and how early relationships develop templates in our brains. So we want to look at that. And then also we want to look at the differences between time in and time out. And then we actually want to look at what PBIS is, what a cultural change to PBIS would look like. And then We want to be able to change social labeling as well. And then finally, the key elements of time in, which are boundaries, predictability, and consistency. So remember, the 2 slides are going to follow right after this, and we'll see you for part 3.